Let's see. Are there any passages that you were thinking of reading, or not, or
Well,
maybe not? Or?
well, this is a bit I've actually never read in public before, and it's very sunset specific. So I thought maybe I'd read a little bit about kind of the big escape that occurred after there were earlier escapes, one of which led me out on a chase along Lawton Street and down. But this is what happened when we were, this is 2005 now, so we'd had the dog for almost a year and a half, a year and 4 months. And we had decided, we had put off doing a kitchen remodel because the dog's fear of men, particularly noisy construction guys, seemed to be not a good mix for him. But we thought he was settled in and things were going to go better. So this is what happened on that day. It was January 11th, 2005, 16 months to the day after we'd adopted Koma. The dog and I were holed up in my study with the door tightly shut. Down the hall, a crew of 4 was demolishing our bathroom and hauling the wreckage out to the street. We had hoped to start this remodeling project a year before, but deferred it during Koma's long adjustment period. Sally, that's my wife, Phoebe, my daughter, and I all agreed enough time had passed and it was safe to proceed, assuming we took the proper precaution to keep Koma out of harm's way. All this had been discussed with the contractor and the crew, a genial, if remarkably loud group. We have to be sure the dog stays inside the house, I told Manny, the burly crew chief. That's the only thing that matters. He won't come near you and we can handle him if he gets freaked out, but we have to make sure he doesn't get loose. Red-haired and red-faced Manny folded his big forearms, each of them about the size of Koma, and tried to look concerned. This was the afternoon before work was to start. Not a problem, he said, barely hiding the impatience about such a petty matter. Manny led me to on a walkthrough of the house and showed me where the barriers would be placed, one in the hallway near the study and another in the dining room doorway. This will stay shut, he said, reaching into the wall and yanking the living room pocket door closed. We'd used it so infrequently over the years I'd forgotten it was there. I approved the plan and told him I'd see them first thing in the morning. Manny and company were true to their word. Large, paint-smeared sheets of plywood, high enough to thwart Koma's leaps and thick enough to prevent him from tunneling through, were installed as promised. The pocket door was pulled shut, but Koma and I were taking no chances. After I'd carried him out to greet the crew, we retreated to the study. Koma did better with the noise and commotion than I thought he would. He took up a sentry's post by the door for a few moments with the wide-eyed, 4-alarm look of his, then slipped back under Sally's desk, turned around a few times and formed himself into a coil on one of the soft white beds we kept for him around the house. With a heavy sigh, he pretended to sleep. After a few minutes of answering email and checking on him every so often, I picked up the phone for a scheduled interview with the theater director on the East Coast. The interview went on longer and proved more productive than I had expected. Laughing with the director on the other end of the line, I forgot about the chaos in the bathroom and the dog playing possum under the desk. I should have known that the uproar in the house couldn't be going down as smoothly with Koma as it seemed. I should have known that 4 strange men storming around and demolishing a whole room had to be jangling his nerves. I should have known to pull the study door shut behind me when I went out to the kitchen after the interview was over to make myself some tea. I should have known, as I'd tell myself 100 times by the end of the day. I knew Koma. I should have known. What I didn't know, as I stood waiting for the water to boil and listening to the racket, was that Koma had made his stealthy way out of the study and was silently scouting the house. I also didn't know that Manny had come back through the house a few minutes before to tell me something about the dumpster out front, heard that I was on the phone, and gone back outside. I also didn't know that instead of pulling the pocket door completely shut, he or someone else on the crew had left a little opening between the heavy, bulky door and the frame. Nor did I know that the workmen had taken the front door of the house off its hinges in order to make carrying the debris out to the street easier. Soon enough, I would know all those crucial details and see how they fitted neatly together, each one a necessary part in the chain of events that was about to be set in motion. But at the moment, I was staring into space and thinking about nothing else but the next phone call I was about to make. The water boiled, the electric teapot clicked off. Just then, as I was filling my cup, I felt it as clearly as if someone had placed a cold hand on the back of my neck. A sinking premonition seized me. It hit me that I had left the study door open, and I knew that wasn't good. "Koma," I called out in my sunniest voice. Childish hope sprang up in me for an instant. If I called him sweetly enough, he'd come. He'd be fine. "Koma, where are you?" I crooned. "Come on, boy." A big metal tool clanked on the bathtub. Someone swore. Someone else laughed. The voice on the radio was railing about immigration. Como, como, here como, como. I walked back through the open door to the study, my last faint hope fading that I would find him there. I checked under the kitchen and dining room tables and went out to the living room. A sliver of clear winter air sparkled from outside through the missing front door and the not quite closed pocket door. That was Como's escape route. I shoved open the pocket door and stepped out to see for myself. Just as he had on his first great break from the house shortly after we got him, the dog was lingering on the front sidewalk. This time there was something hesitant in his expression and stance, a wistful air that seemed to say he regretted all the trouble he was about to cause, but really he had no choice in the matter. We'd filled the house with noise and mayhem and men. What else could he do but flee? "That's your dog, Julio," the youngest crew member called out to me from the dumpster where he was stomping down our bathroom's splintered remains. "Let me grab him for you." Dressed in a painter's white jumpsuit and perched up on the trash mountain, Julio did look like the construction worker version of a delivering angel. For an instant I thought he might save us with a mighty leap down to seize Como, and maybe he could have. But I was trying to think rationally, factoring in the dog's foot speed and distrust of men. I'd have to do this myself. "No, don't do that," I yelled back at Julio. Who gave me an odd look. It could have been the sudden, stressed urgency in my voice that caused his double take. More likely it was what I was wearing as I stood there trying to master the situation from the front porch. A navy blue bathrobe, and as far as he could see, nothing else. "You sure, amigo? I'm pretty good with dogs." "No," I repeated and started down the steps in my bare feet, gingerly picking a path through the litter of wood scraps, linoleum bits, and stray nails and screws. Como, I could see, still hadn't moved off very far. He was watching the action from under the tree in front of Pam and Cheryl's house. "Como, what do you say? Let's head back inside. I got some good stuff in there for you." It wasn't fully conscious, but I must have been trying to channel the jocular tone of the crew, make the dog feel part of the scene. It didn't take. His ears flipped up quizzically for a moment before he turned and headed for the corner. It had been well over a year since we'd played this scene, but Koma remembered his moves. He was going west, just as he had on the morning when the Good Samaritan in his power bar, it's a previous episode I won't try to explain, came to the rescue. The dog saw me coming, crossed 10th Avenue and picked up speed. Koma may have been bent on a reenactment, but I wasn't betting on another stroke of divine intervention. The stinking feeling I'd had inside the house struck again, and for a second time I considered taking Julio up on his offer. But when I glanced back, he was heading up the front steps to continue mauling our bathroom. I was on my own. Determined to cross Como up and short-circuit our old chase before it got started, I immediately crossed Lawton and ran to get ahead of him on the opposite side of the street. My hope was to shoot back over at some point and catch him by surprise. And if that didn't work, at least I'd be able to herd him back toward the house. I tried not to think about what I was wearing, or mostly wasn't wearing, as people filtered by me on their way to the bus stop and work. Como, meanwhile, seemed to be in no particular hurry. He was catching up on the sidewalk smells and pausing at one point for a quick leg lift on a brick retaining wall. Before we reached 11th Avenue, I was several hundred feet ahead of him and ready to swoop in. Using the traffic as a cover, I darted behind a passing blue airport van to strike. Como saw me coming before I reached the curb, wheeled around, and picked up his pace in the other direction. All at once, I lost what little illusion of control I had left. The ambush had been my best shot, and it hadn't come close to working. "Como, Como," I shouted. "Come back, Como." Not a chance. He scooted onto the corner of Lawton and 10th, where, instead of crossing the street in direction of the house and a possible Julio miracle catch by the dumpster, the dog turned left and started down the hill toward Kirkham Street. It was new territory for him, an unfamiliar stretch full of people and cars in rush hour mode. I broke into a run, my feet slamming into the gritty pavement. If Como couldn't hear me in my heaving breath, he could surely sense my panic, which of course only fed his own. The gulf between us widened. I sped up. He looked back. He sped up more. "Como," I pleaded between ragged breaths, "come here." I could barely hear the sound of my own voice. It was like one of those dreams where you're trying to cry for help and nothing but a hoarse, strangled whisper comes out. A row of identical red garages that I'd never noticed before spooled by. I had a clear, awful certainty that I wasn't going to catch Como and that this couldn't end well. Giving up hope, but still running as hard as I could on feet I could barely feel, I was struck by the absurdity and unreality of the repeating red doors. I saw myself against them as strangers across the street in their sensible work clothes would. A 53-year-old man hurtling down the hill in a flapping bathrobe, shoeless and wild-haired in pursuit of a harmless-looking small dog. The moment passed, my brain clicked off. Koma knifed around the corner onto Kirkham. He was heading west again. Help! I screamed when I rounded the corner behind him and saw people coming my way at the far end of the block. The dog was between us, running right at them. Help me get him, he's mine! We were closing in on him from both directions, with the buildings on one side of us and a line of parked cars on the other. Someone, a man, a woman I couldn't say, made a move at him. Koma darted free and into the street. The driver of the SUV never saw him, never had a chance. She hit him with her front left wheel. Koma let out a sickening yelp, gave one mighty thrash, and dropped on his side. It was over that fast. He was dead. I knew it. I darted out to him and couldn't bear to look. I chased him under a car. He was dead, or worse, painfully dying. It happened because I was lazy and careless and preoccupied with some stupid phone call. It happened because of Manny or whatever mindless idiot had left the pocket door open. Or because the dog really was afraid of him and I hadn't found a way to make him trust me after all these months. And he was right. Look at what I'd done. I thought about Phoebe and Sally, their faces, their tears, and forced that out of my mind. I had to stay focused. I had to do whatever was still possible. I couldn't lose it or lose myself in guilt and recrimination. Koma lay on his right side, inches from the SUV's big black wheel. Somehow the driver had managed not to run over him completely. That, or she'd already backed up instinctively and run over him twice, or bounced off him somehow. I was trying to make sense of his not being directly under the wheel, but a little ways off from it. Some detached part of me was playing traffic cop or lawyer before the other part of me, the terrified and enraged and desperate part, caught up. Koma wasn't moving, his face pressed to the ground and one unblinking eye staring, fish-like, straight up. But he was still alive, breathing so quickly his sides seemed to flutter. I reached out to put my hand there. He sprang up at my touch and bit me so fast and so many times. On my shin, my bathrobe, my right arm, the fleshy ball of my left thumb, that I never felt pain. If anything, I felt a little flicker of gratitude and relief. At least his self-protective animal reflexes were intact. That was something to cling to.
And you still sport the little scar.
I do. I sort of wear it proudly. The place where he bit me on my thumb is there permanently. It's the battle wound.